My Bitcoin price prediction for the end of 2024. First and foremost, there are three major events that need to take place for us to see over a $100,000 Bitcoin. So can we get there? What's my prediction? But first, here is what a billionaire believes is going to happen to the price of Bitcoin.
I guess the easiest way to get a clear view of where Bitcoin is going over the next 5 years is take a look at the last five. Right? The last five, Bitcoin has been an outsider in the finance business, but coming closer and closer and closer. Right now, there's an ETF just starting to go a little bit mainstream, maybe a toe in the water of mainstream, but banks still can't clear it. Banks still can't transact in it. Banks still can't custodian it. Banks still won't transact in it, and they won't finance it yet. I think people misunderstand traditional financial service companies. They want to transact in Bitcoin. They want new asset classes to transact in. That's just a good thing, but they need the regulator to say it's okay. Right now, today, right? If a bank were to hold your Bitcoin, they would have to set aside their own money equal to that amount in sort of like in a jail. I mean, you'd say, well, that's crazy. The answer is that's why they don't hold it. But if you let them hold it, if the regulatory environment was good, you will see all the traditional financial service companies, the big banks, the big brokerage companies, they're all going to go headfirst into Bitcoin pond. That's what's going to happen, and it's coming. It's a slow, steady process. But eventually there's going to be a CFTC chair who says, you know what, Bitcoin is a financial asset and we're going to treat it as such. And when that happens, you're going to see Bitcoin move in a very, very strong positive direction. So that's why I'm a fan of Bitcoin. It's going to go much higher. It always bounces around like any other financial asset, but ultimately over the next 5 years, as it gets invited into this party, up we go.
And up we go with reason number one, which, of course, I told you guys was going to be the elections coming up this November because regulations matter. You heard it from himself, a multi-billion hedge fund coming out and saying we need proper regulation. And there is only one candidate that is going to give us a commissioner that is very pro-Bitcoin, specifically from the CFTC, the SEC, and so on. They are decided to be put into those seats. Those seats aren't elected officials. The voter, me, you, everybody watching, we're not the ones that get to decide whether the SEC is going to choose Gary Gensler or not. It is the executive branch. So we need officials that have strong regulatory approaches towards Bitcoin that are positive rather than negative to see an onslaught of banking giants enter this market. Now, that means one of two things, okay? That means either A, we get a pro-Bitcoin candidate that is going to strive for pro-crypto legislation, or it means we're going to get a crypto candidate that delays that regulation, that positive aggression, that positive legislation and approach for roughly 4 more years. So that is reason number one. Now, the second reason why Bitcoin is struggling and ranging between $60,000 and really $55,000 is almost 7 million addresses purchased Bitcoin between $61,700 and $70,500. Currently trading at a price of $56,700. Every trader who acquired the asset at this range is currently at a loss. For Bitcoin to absorb this selling pressure, for Bitcoin to break out of this downward trend of that $70,000 level, we are going to need to not only break the trend to jump to new highs, but the cryptocurrency needs significant momentum. So, of course, positive crypto legislation and a positive Bitcoin presidency or Senate chairs, for example, Johnny Deaton, who might end up beating Elizabeth Warren. These are positive momentum narratives that are starting to be created today. They're starting to be drafted, but there is one thing. There's actually two things that we're going to talk about in today's episode, but there is one thing that is perhaps the most important moment in Bitcoin's history, and that is going to be the Federal Reserve's decision on whether or not they are going to cut interest rates. You see, historically, September is the most bearish month for Bitcoin with an average decline of 5%. Bitcoin began this month in the red, falling from $60,000 to $55,000, and data from CoinMarketCap shows the asset has slumped 5% in just the last 7 days. Here's what that chart looks like for you. Highlighted in the red, you can see that September is historically one of the worst months, and actually the worst month for Bitcoin's price action, followed by a very bullish October, very bullish November, and a very bullish December. 22% on average in October, 46% on average in November, and 5% on average in December. So if the Federal Reserve does decide to cut interest rates, what does that mean for Bitcoin's price? Are we going to be stuck at 55K? Are we going to be stuck around 65K? Or can we even break out and hit new all-time highs by the end of this year? Well, the answer may be able to be found over on X. You have Zero IKA here, a Bitcoin technical analyst, pointing out that there is diminishing returns in these markets. So if we're looking historically, you need to know what this means, because previously in 2014 to 2015, the bear market dropped by 86% in Bitcoin's price. 2018 to 2019, we saw an 84% drop. 2020 to 2023, 2022 to 2023, down 77%. But the first halving cycle in 2012, not the bear market, but the bull run, Bitcoin jumped by 570,000%. The second halving cycle in 2016, 11,500%. The third halving in 2020, 2,000% on Bitcoin. So there's very clearly a crystal clear depiction that massive gains are having diminishing returns over time. This is so when we're looking at this chart, what is the potential breakout if we were to see something that we saw in 2021, 2016, and all these other historical halving events? Well, if we have a low interest rate environment, the Fed's cut interest rates, money starts pouring back into the hands of people. That targeted area could very well potentially be between $85,000 and $110,000, as you can see in the yellow square. Now, I am more of a conservative when it comes to this viewpoint, and that's primarily going to be because when you're looking at the fear and greed on the market, we're at a point where retail is really uncertain. This is institutional money. And that's going to bring us directly back to reason number 3. We need a bullish news event. Of course, you have the FOMC meeting this month, which is where we're going to see the Federal Reserve more than likely cut interest rates by 25 basis points. And you can see that on poly markets, where traders think there is a more than 70% chance of only a 25 basis point cut in the Fed's next rate decision. With that Fed rate decision, okay, of course, you have the CPI numbers and all the data points that will help confirm that outlook and that data point at the end of this month. But with that, we need to see the liquidity in the crypto market from stablecoins to start entering back into this market. And I do believe this is going to come down to September 10th with the debate between Donald Trump and Harris. Right now, institutions are being very cautious when it comes into the risk on aspect of the crypto market. And we have a ton. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars in liquidity sitting on the sidelines right now in cash, in stable coins, ready to be used as firepower back into the crypto market. Much of the capital that is being allocated to stable coins remains without providing buying pressure on the order books. But this firepower could reach the market at any time. This is coming, of course, from CryptoQuant. But we're not out of the woods yet, because if the Feds do cut interest rates, there's even analysts predicting a price plunge of Bitcoin to $45,000. Potential effects of the Fed rate cut. The analyst noted that while Bitcoin is often considered as a hedge against traditional financial assets, the digital asset is still influenced by macroeconomic conditions. Per the report, Bitcoin has surged over 32% since early August, mainly driven by traders anticipating dovish comments on the Fed. However, in the past week, Bitfinex analysts point out a shift in the market dynamics, with the spot traders aggressively selling their Bitcoin while futures and perpetual market spectators are buying. The analyst predicts that if the Fed implements a modest 25 basis point cut, meaning we do not get a 50 or 75 basis point rate cut, the market would likely absorb the news much quicker, resulting in a long-term price appreciation for Bitcoin as liquidity increases and recession fears ease. So this goes to my point. Again, long-term, the Fed's cutting. And the price prediction I'm going to give you guys is for 2024 in December. This is going to be bullish for the months of October, November, and December. However, on the other hand, implementing a more aggressive 50 basis point could temporarily spike Bitcoin's price by up to 8%. But a 15 to 20% drop for Bitcoin in September is still possible. This is because the analysts speculate that Bitcoin could face this decline in price following a rate cut, according to historical data. Cycle peaks and percentage returns typically decrease by 60 to 70% each time, in addition to a reduction in average bull market corrections. Thus, they project Bitcoin's price to be around $60,000 before rate cuts. So moving up into the rate decision at the FOMC meeting, we get a $60,000 price action before placing the potential bottom between the low of $50,000 and $40,000. And that brings me to, of course, my price prediction here. What you're looking at, these two, they kind of look like goalposts. This was, of course, October to the end of December in the bull run of 2020. Massive gains for Bitcoin. Right here is going to be October to, once again, the end of December in this market, which means we could see a similar pattern that we saw in 2020. Now, my guess right now, I do side with a little bit more of the bearish news leading up to that event. I think we can trend sideways, just like we saw, of course, for the last few weeks in September in 2020. In September 2024, I believe that history might end up rhyming here. So I don't necessarily care that we get a breakout to the upside or the downside. I think worst case scenario, you trend sideways, maybe get a bit of a pump into the market before coming back down to roughly $45,000. This is going to be around my worst case scenario. Before October, November, and December, I do believe, I am in the camp that there is like a 55% chance Donald Trump has the election in the cards. And if we get that positive momentum, we get pro-Bitcoin legislation, we also have cheaper monetary policy. We have quantitative easing at this point. We start reducing those interest rate cuts, meaning personal savings rates start to rise. Wages keep up against inflation. Inflation costs come down as we produce more energy. That could be what projects Bitcoin back to the $66,000 and even a potential breakout of 75K before maybe retesting and seeing new all-time highs in 2025.